I've been struggling to write this video because I feel extremely hopeless at the moment. I feel like there's a good chance no one will ever see this, and it might be the single most important video I've ever made. My brain is sick with a chronic incurable illness that makes it very likely I will die young, and when I tell people about it, it makes everything about my life a little bit harder with those people. Even when confiding in people that are trying their hardest to support me, it isn't always easy, which is why I have to make this video. Hello, my name is Matt Brotherton, and I'm a person who wears a whole lot of hats. I'm a freelance illustrator, a small business owner, the deposed pharaoh of Earth, and for this video, probably the most important is a person who lives with a mental illness called bipolar disorder. You might hear that and think that means I bounce back and forth between being a hamster monkey that's all hopped up on goofballs and a literal couch slug. And honestly, I don't blame you for thinking that way. For most people, the only time they hear about bipolar disorder is when it's in a TV show, and Hollywood loves to depict someone with bipolar disorder as exactly that. The only other time you might hear about it is in the news, when someone with absolutely no knowledge or insight about the topic will explain why someone did something monstrous as because they are bipolar. For that matter, if you look up the definition of the disorder on the internet, you get a sentence that says exactly that. A mental condition marked by alternating periods of elation and depression. But everything about that is just wrong for the way I experience this disease and the way other people I've talked to experience this disease. If you learn nothing else from this video, I want you to understand one very important point. The absolute biggest misconception about bipolar disorder is that it causes a swing between elation and depression. Absolutely wrong. Bipolar disorder is a biochemical condition, and it causes a problem with neurotransmitters in a way that makes it harder to regulate emotions. I absolutely hate the current definition because though it's an effective diagnostic tool, they usually can tell from those things that you have bipolar disorder. It doesn't accurately reflect my experience. The part of the diagnosis that is misguided is the belief that mania, or in my case, hypomania, is a euphoric state. And it's not. This misunderstanding is huge. I don't always have the I am an immortal god that can do no wrong form of hypomania. I usually have the oh god, all my feelings are blasting from a fire hose the size of a VW bus form of hypomania. My emotions get heightened, and that means all of my emotions get cranked up to an 11 when I'm on medication. When I'm not on medication, it's over 9,000. Everything I feel when I'm in a hypomanic state is at its maximum intensity. See, I don't experience minor frustration or slight annoyances. I have the depths of hopeless despair that cannot be escaped, or a rage that can only be described in the mechanics of the player's handbook. And of course, it makes imposter syndrome feel like a cheese grater scraping at my brain on the finest possible setting. I'm talking plastic jar Parmesan cheese levels of fine, barely more than dust-sized cheese grater just shredding away in there. My brain constantly tells me I'm not good enough and never will be good enough, and success is impossible, so why even bother? And of course, at the same time, it's also telling me that if I don't succeed, and it's already told me I won't, that everything bad's gonna happen. I'll starve in a ditch, and most importantly, that I deserve it because I am an expletive deleted loser. It takes credit for all of the world's problems while simultaneously telling me I am useless. So that's a fun way to live. In fact, it was doing that a lot while I was trying to film this video. About the time I started writing this particular section of the script, my brain started letting me know that nobody cares. No one's going to watch this. You're a loser. You will die alone and unloved because that's the only possible fate for you because you deserve it. Sorry. I've just been sharing a little bit of my internal self-talk there. Better shove those feelings back down deep inside my brain where it won't possibly cause any significant emotional problems later in my life. Oh wait, that's a spoiler. So let's talk about the brutal dark truths no one wants to discuss when they're dehumanizing and demonizing someone with my particular mental illness. Let's start with the most depressing, because why not? I'm gonna die young. Yeah. And I'm not talking about some tragic outcome, which seems to impact a lot of people with bipolar disorder, an unusually high number of people with bipolar disorder. We just die younger on average, 12 to 15 years younger, even from natural causes. And the exact reason for that isn't quite understood yet. But the current going theory is that we age faster because of the stress that manic states put on the body. There's also a lot of evidence to show that we get cognitive decline at a younger age for the same reason. One recent study from the University of Michigan actually showed that people with bipolar disorder are 6 times more likely to die in any 10-year period than someone without it. And for a comparison, smokers are only twice as likely to die in a given 10-year period than non-smokers. That's right. Jerk brain kills more people than smoking. That's a true fact. It's probably a good time to talk about medication. The truth is medication can help, but it isn't a cure. There is no cure. Bipolar disorder is a chronic illness, and it should be talked about that way. We should have the conversation that way. It's not a psychological condition, it is a neurological condition. Treatment is only meant to help manage the symptoms, and it doesn't make them go away, it just makes them easier to handle, which is why we have to look for ways to cope. And the biggest tools for that are things I actually do in my everyday life. You see, 2 of the most powerful mechanisms we have, art and journaling. And those are 2 things I do daily. Big bonus, and one that I have been incredibly fortunate and privileged enough to have, is a good support network of friends and family. Having someone who understands that you aren't always able to control the way you feel is very important. Not just because it helps you vent frustrations and get that out before you turn it into a more dangerous thing, but also because society stigmatizes bipolar disorder in a way that is real and damaging to people living with it. You see, people living with bipolar disorder are often assumed to be a ticking time bomb, and that's just the way the media loves to depict us. Often, when there is a tragedy in the media's attention, it is pointed to as a cause. Someone who has absolutely no business talking about it and no expertise in it at all whatsoever will say, obviously, this person was bipolar. And then once it's out there, it's just accepted by society as the truth. It isn't just television, it's our laws. My diagnosis shows up on most background checks, like those you go through when you're applying for a job or to rent an apartment. And here in Missouri, it can be flagged in my DMV records. So if I'm ever pulled over for some reason, any reason, the officer will know that they're dealing with a high-risk suspect. I'm not sharing all of this because I want your sympathy. I'm actually lucky. I do have that strong support network, and I do have the ability to use the tools that help me cope. Because of that support, because of that privilege, I can talk about it. I have to talk about it. It's the only way we can end the stigma. And because I have a little bit of security in my life, I have to use it. To paraphrase Uncle Ben, with great privilege comes great responsibility. Okay, this video has gotten really long and really kind of dark. Look, if you feel comfortable doing so, please share your experiences in the comments below. We all have something going on inside our brain, something that eats at us, whether that is another mental health issue like mine, or a different form of neurodivergence, or just some trauma that we're trying to unpack. There's something in us. And statistically speaking, artists, especially visual artists, are more likely to have one of those conditions than the general population. And if we can't talk about it as creators and the people who build our culture, who can? If you're also living with bipolar disorder, I want you to know that you're not alone, and this disease is a part of us, but it is not who we are. It does not define us. You are a person living with bipolar disorder, not a bipolar person. And if you would like to know a little bit more about how art helps me keep my zen and push through some of the noise in my head, you can watch the video on your screen now. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.